December 5th edition of the PFF Forecast. George and I, George on location, will be talking about Ron Rivera being let go by the Carolina Panthers. What does that mean? And then we're going to dive deeply into the games right away, starting with Thursday Night Football and finishing with a Monday Night Football game that is sure to make NFL films for decades in the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's rock.
Wow, that was well done.
Thanks, George. How is Los Angeles right now?
Well, here's the funny thing is I'm in Los Angeles / Las Vegas for a total of about 24 hours. And it has been raining pretty much the whole time. So I managed to hit like the one section of the entire year where it rains. But other than that, it's good, man.
Your week is going better than Ron Rivera's, but worse. I mean, I think God's just telling you to stop talking shit about Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's probably it. He was like, listen, man, be happy that you're alive. It was funny. I was kind of taken aback by the Ron Rivera news. And when I was here in Los Angeles, I got a chance to go to NFL Network, and they were some people were wondering, like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, who jumps in as the coach? And I was thinking of it totally differently, because I'm not actually concerned who the new coach is. I'm more concerned with whether Cam Newton stays or not. So I guess I'll ask you this, like, who do you think the new coach is, and does that matter for Cam Newton, or is he just totally done no matter what?
Well, I do think that the Panthers really need to decide about Newton, and I think this season, I mean, people got out ahead of themselves and they won 4 straight games with Kyle Allen, but in all honesty, like, when you have a franchise quarterback, we saw this with Indianapolis and Andrew Luck, we've seen it with the likes of Derek Carr and folks that, have people have been up and down on. If you build an infrastructure for a quarterback who's not perfect, you can get some good results from that quarterback. And if you think the grass is greener on the other side, you're going to be wrong a fair amount of time, right? And so I think they keep Newton around, and then they just, for example, Greg Roman would be a terrific head coach, to play to Newton's strengths. But it also, what are they going to do in the general manager position as well? Because, we know that team, they just hired a director of analytics. They have a new owner who is pretty progressive. So I think Rivera is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of, like, what is going to happen with this team. So it'll be a really interesting thing to monitor moving forward.
I had a couple of thoughts here, and it was interesting. I brought up McCarthy. I think he makes obvious sense. And especially because he's taken a year off, and I think would come into that situation and be like, hey, I'm going to embrace analytics, but I also bring, pedigree with me, which I'm sure Tepper is looking for, because he probably doesn't want to be, the new owner who brings in a new green guy, and that guy gets, totally blown over. And there's like a floor there, right? But then you've got Greg Roman, and this is where it gets a little interesting, because if Greg Roman comes over there and Cam Newton is healthy, doesn't that seem like a potential fit, and you keep Newton?
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the issue that Newton has that some of these other more athletic quarterbacks don't have, at least up until now, is how injury-prone Newton is.
Yeah,
and
taking
so the hard part, so when you look at Baltimore with Lamar or Arizona with Kyler Murray or, some of these other teams, Russell Wilson in Seattle, they don't take the big hits, and I think that is somewhat of a product of their body size, some of the product of the way that they are. Newton, to his credit, like, the people that give him crap are wrong, but to his credit, he is a winner. Like, he wants to win football games, so he goes through the physicality of that, and he pays a price. So,
yeah,
so that's the hard part.
It's like anti-Lamar Jackson, actually. Like, Lamar Jackson, you think is going to take these huge hits, and somehow the dude is, like, so smooth, right? He just manages to get under the hits, avoid them. And Newton is the other way. He just, like, delivers hits. So by the nature of that, he's going to take these.
Yeah, it's sort of like, and we hate to throw this guy out here because he's a once in a lifetime, but like Barry Sanders, like, never took a big hit. Like, he was just so compact, and Murray's that way as well, where like it's the avoidance there that's actually the real value, because Carolina, it was a team that, I know they were 0-2 when Newton started, but like, they're a team that I think we were a little lower on going into the year, and that's played out. But there is a bunch of sample paths where Newton plays well enough this year for them to be a winner, and unfortunately, they never got to realize that.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Any other dark horse candidates? I think Eric Bieniemy is like a decent guy that's kind of flown under the radar because Kansas City hasn't been as great.
Here's a question though that I'll bring up, which is interesting. I think Doug Peterson has fallen off a little bit this year, at least probably in the perception of many. Matt Nagy has clearly fallen off in the perception of some, having gone from Coach of the Year to where Chicago is. Frank Reich as well. Frank Reich's he's adjacent to Andy Reid. He's not directly from him, but he's fallen a little bit, although I think people respect Reich, given all he's had to go through. Does that influence the Bieniemy thing at all? Like, the Andy Reid tree is not perfect?
I think it does, but it also is in light of the Sean McVay tree
yes,
undergoing a drought. So
we're in a pruning era in the history of NFL coaches.
Which honestly makes kind of like the retread guy that fell out of style last year more appealing, and probably makes the let me bring in a college guy that has done some good things. I don't know that Kingsbury has hurt that moniker at all. The Cardinals have been bad, but we knew they'd be bad.
Kingsbury, aside from this past week, Kingsbury's been awesome. I mean, honestly, that team was not historically bad last year, but offensively.
Let's not go with awesome, given his field goal feeling.
Sure. But in terms of the delta with that team, they're horrible. Their defense is worse than it was last year. And their offense a season ago with Leftwich and McCoy was the league's worst by a country mile, and he's at least made them competitive in the majority of their games last week, notwithstanding, which was a lucky big edge on Greenlight's part, and it was one of the rare games that we did not have to sweat. So, speaking of a sweat,
let's go.
Dallas goes to Chicago tonight. These are two teams, right? These are two teams for which we had preseason win total unders.
Yep.
Dallas is a 3-point favorite. I think that has moved out since the beginning when it was 2.5, although it's a juiced 3, I believe. Who do we like? So I think that there's a little bit of value here on the Chicago Bears now that this number's out to 3 and the money line's out to plus 150-ish. Chicago's the side here, right? I mean, they're the undervalued team here in the NFL. A week after having basically David Blow almost beat them.
Yeah, but isn't Dallas super? I mean, as much of an undervalue as you're going to find for Dallas as well. I agree that I think the home, the Bears as a home team getting 3 points is appealing, and Trubisky actually played, well in that game against the Lions, which is obviously something that I think the market probably has forgotten by now, because both these teams played on Thanksgiving. What does worry me though is that the Dallas Cowboys offense has been good fundamentally, and yet is being treated like it's a complete disaster because they've been unable to capitalize in the red zones, bad turnovers and whatever. But generally, I like to fade that narrative, which is, that Dak Prescott's not playing that well. That's false. Their offense is not doing well. That's also false. When it's things that, just a couple plays here or there can make that completely change. So I think if I had to take this game, I would just take the Bears money line and wait for Dallas to just jump into flames. Because that's what happens if they lose this game, right?
Right. And this shows how much the perception has changed. The Bears under win total is 9.5. Dallas is flat 9. I think if you want both of those to hit, you want Chicago to win tonight and then have them lose just one of their last 3 games. Whereas for Dallas, they do have a tough road here, having to play the Rams and the Eagles. The difficulty of playing the Eagles will be up for debate. But you want Chicago to win this game, and there is some value on the money line here. In that regard, the thing that's, I think, sneaky, too, is if you look at the matchups, Prince Amukamara tonight is doubtful with a hamstring injury. Danny Trevathan is out with an elbow injury. Amukamara played most of the game the other day against the Detroit Lions, and they were still, beaten pretty badly at times by the Kenny Galladays and the Marvin Joneses of the world. Dallas, as you said, is fundamentally good, but so has been the Bears' defense. Now the question is how can they respond to these injuries? Because now you're starting to add up the players. You're adding Trevathan, Akeem Hicks, Prince Amukamara. Are they going to be that defense that we can count on, as we have been basically the entire season, sans the turnovers, right? The issue with them is they weren't getting turnovers, and they finally got one at the very end of the game against the Lions, but you can't count on that. Dak, Amari Cooper, obviously Michael Gallup, and then maybe a little Zeke out of the backfield for 2 or 3 yards at a time. I do think Dallas is going to be able to move the ball in this game.
I mean, David Blow managed to move the ball, so I don't see why Dak wouldn't be able to. Because the Eagles lost, it's the last thing I'll say. A great article that if you want to read more about the NFC least, you should go to PFF.com. We talk about the interesting dynamic of the NFC East now that Philly managed to lose to the Dolphins is that Dallas is now like in a commanding spot to win this division. And obviously it gets more commanding if they win this game, goes up to 88%. But if they lose, they still are have about a 70% chance to win the division and make the playoffs, which is crazy because their win total would then dip below about 8 wins.
Yeah.
The projected win total would dip below 8 wins. And, the Redskins would of course remain alive. But I think that's a narrative that probably shouldn't be totally dismissed, right? It is a must-win game because of the narratives in Dallas, and what Jerry Jones has said, but it's still not quite a must-win game because they can still make the playoffs and save the season. So I think it'll be interesting. I'm fascinated to see how the Dallas offense does outside against a team that isn't a total joke.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the total on this game, about 43.5. We were really heavy on the Bears over on Thanksgiving when it was 38.5, 39. I think at this number, it's probably fair. I would almost lean to the under even when you look at, sort of what has felled the Cowboys of late, which is like, what would Jason Garrett think has hurt the Cowboys of late? Being aggressive on fourth down, throwing the football too much and getting some turnovers, right? Some sack fumbles and stuff. So like, even though we would say, okay, those are just noise, like he might just like go in the tank and run the ball with Zeke all night. That plays to the under, I think, substantially. Chicago, without Taylor Gabriel, I don't know. Anyway, Allen Robinson has been one of the most impressive players in football this year, in my opinion, and I think if Chicago leans into that a little bit, they could, score a little bit and make this game a little bit more exciting. That being said, I would not put any money on the over.
Yes, I would not either. I'm with you there.
Okay, let's move on to a game that
we have to. Do we have to move on to Cleveland?
I was going to say this one is a little tilting for me. Because last week we were, we had already written about half of the Bengals against the Jets up, and then that number moved from a 3.5, which had a ton of value, down to a 3, almost down to 2.5 at kickoff, and so we punted it and we went with Indianapolis against Tennessee, which had market resistance against us, and that turned out horribly. So we still see some value here on the Bengals, right? I mean, plus 8.5, down to plus 8, and plus 7.5 in some spots here. The Bengals would be getting almost more than a full touchdown on the road against a Browns team that's reeling.
It's funny that I wonder why. So this line has moved a ton, and is that because Baker Mayfield's hand, or is it because people are like, well, actually the Cleveland Browns suck? What do you think has been a bigger reason for that?
Well, okay, so the part that scares me is the fact that the Bengals have been 3-0 against the spread over the last 3 weeks. And they were somehow, and we talked about this on the pod, we were so upset that our model didn't have any value here, but the Bengals were 13-point underdogs at Oakland, which just seems like an atrocity in hindsight. And then they were 6.5-point underdogs at home against Pittsburgh, covered that number, and then last week they won outright against the Jets as a field goal underdog. So I think the market's starting to say, okay, the Bengals have some life. They certainly have not quit on Zach Taylor, right? Like that's actually important. but that scares me because, again, like whenever you say a team is X against the spread over the previous so and so weeks, obviously that's a moving target, and the market responds to that. And we've already seen this as the number has gone down in our direction from when we printed this pick. The side that I'm actually, I actually like in terms of a, fundamental reason why this is a good play is, Baker Mayfield's hurt, right? He injured his hand against the Pittsburgh Steelers and was not the same after. There's a ton of injuries on this side. You took about Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, both questionable with lower body injuries. And I think the kicker here is also the fact that Myles Garrett's out. Olivier Vernon played only about 10 snaps last week. The person with the highest number of pressures on the Browns last week was a defensive back. And that plays exactly into what the Bengals don't want, which is pressure on the quarterback. I mean, their offensive line is terrible, but the Jets, were not able to capitalize on it because they're terrible up front as well. Cleveland, I think, has the potential to be terrible up front because of injuries and suspensions.
Here's a question. If Cleveland loses this game to Cincinnati, is Freddie Kitchens the coach next week?
If they lose outright, I would say that there's a pretty big chance that the answer is no. I mean, the problem because
I think there's some. I agree. I like 7.5. I like 8 if you can get it, obviously, but I don't hate a little plus 290 either.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and like we haven't talked about this enough, but like what you're essentially doing is trading the points for variance, right?
Yep.
And our friend Lee Sharp was on Twitter last week, and he was saying hasn't done very well this year betting sports, but last week he was like, look, my model likes Washington plus 400. It likes what was the other team? Obviously the Bengals, and then there was another huge dog that it liked, and all three of those cash, right? And like you can go months with betting value laden, value gathering underdogs, and they don't hit, but then eventually they do, and then you have a humongous week, right? And to me, like I think that's a part of this shtick is that sometimes they don't hit, but you can. I do agree with you. I think maybe plus 290, for example, I think gives you almost a 1% edge, from our perspective. Whereas if this number got down to 7, I don't think the spread pick has nearly as much value as the money line pick would.
Yep, I'm with you there. I don't like that this is taken a huge dive. Since
I think it's confirmation. I honestly like this more. So we talk about Tennessee, Indy. I like this more than the market like moving in a starkly different direction. Yeah. Although we've seen times when for example, on Monday Night Football, we like Seattle a little bit at -3. We like them a lot at -2.5, right? But most of the people liked Minnesota in that matchup against the spread, and ultimately ended up working out for us. So these things are some oftentimes resemble a random walk anyway. So we like to find patterns where they don't exist maybe. Okay, let's
move on to a real game that people want to watch.
Okay, New Orleans, San Francisco.
Niners.
Your Niners. I was at the Bengals game Sunday, but I have to make a confession that I was in the box most of the time watching the Niners versus the Ravens. While my wife enjoyed the ambiance of Paul Brown Stadium.
Jesus, that is an oxymoron if I've ever heard one. The thing that has given me pause lately is I watched that Niners game. I watched it again, the Ravens game, and I came away with it impressed by the Niners more than I was by the Ravens, despite the Ravens winning. Now, I have then become super tilted by that because I've talked to like 5 different people that have had the same takeaway. So now I know I'm wrong, and that I should not read into that a whole lot. But that, to me, is the reason that this number is 2.5, right? It's that people watch that Niners game against the Ravens. The Ravens have just been blowing teams out, and the Niners are 4th and 1 away, actually 2 4th and 1s away, right? The one they did not get and the one that the Ravens did get from winning that game. And were more impressive on offense, right? Their EPA per play on offense was better than the Ravens in that game.
Yeah.
The turnover that they had, the fumble Garoppolo had, was like a bigger loss for them than the turnover that Lamar Jackson had. So that, to me, it means that there's a little bit of extra love for the Niners. Meanwhile, the Saints could have lost to the Falcons because of, Younghoe Koo's amazing onside kick. And Drew Brees is just like not throwing the ball downfield. So I understand why there's some value on the Saints as a less than 3-point, favorite home. However, the total is at 44.5.
Yeah,
and
I think we printed 44, but yes, I mean, it's kind of bounced around between those two numbers all week.
And that to me is a little low. That's throwing a little shade at Jimmy G and this Niners offense. That here's what how we talk about quarterbacks throwing the ball downfield, 20 plus yards or whatever. The Niners run game is the equivalent of throwing passes downfield in the run game. Like their run concepts, they always have the potential to be these big plays in ways that I don't think a lot of run games do. And that's my rationale for liking the Niners.
Here's what I'll push back. And again, like I very much love your reasoning there for the two offenses. The other thing is I mean, median scoring in the league is down quite a bit this year, much like it was in 2017. But if you look at games where at least one of the quarterbacks has like basically the grade that Drew Brees has in our system, it's not as discernible. And so like I think that this is depressed, I think, in a very defense matters way. And of course we are I would say hesitatingly on the defense doesn't matter train. But I'll push back on the Niners. They had a good effort against Baltimore for sure. And you watch that game and you think to yourself, okay, this is a team that can compete in the NFL. But the Niners scored their first touchdown of the game on a 4th and short on a deep pass to Deebo Samuel, where Marcus Peters was, I don't know what, he was watching the Bengals game while I was watching the Ravens game, right? So there was that like sort of luck. And then, of course, that drive was precipitated by Lamar Jackson's first fumble of the year. And so there are different ways that game plays out, and I agree that like if we're going to play the whole, okay, the Niners didn't convert on these 2 4th downs, we also have to talk about the ones that they did convert. And I think that the 7 points they got from the one conversion more than outweighs the maybe 3 points that they could have got from the other 2. So that would be my only pushback and why I do like the Saints here. But I think the over is the better play.
Yeah, I went back and forth on that because this is attacking Marcus Peters, in that situation I love. And it shows like if they just run a run play to pick up the first down, they still have a pretty good shot at scoring a touchdown. So I do agree with you. I've just gone back and forth on that same thought. But yeah, I would rather consider putting money down for charity on the over, which means everyone out there listening, all 5 of you should probably take the Saints against the spread.
Well, and that was the thing is like last week, I went back and, last week, the only 2 picks that we got wrong the entire week were the 2 that we printed up on Sunday. And so sometimes, sometimes we don't believe our own numbers, and sometimes, we get on tilt, and sometimes we believe too much in our own numbers. But, our biggest edges last week were Seattle against the spread, the Los Angeles Rams against the spread, and we talked ourselves out of both of those, as well as the over in the Thanksgiving morning game. So there is a big edge on the Saints here, and I think that there are other people that also believe the same thing. That being said, there's a lot of reasons why the Saints could be trending in the wrong direction, the Niners could be trending in the other direction that could make that not necessarily as apparent as we think. The biggest one of which would be the fact that Drew Brees has fewer than 2% of his passes being big-time throws. Both of these guys are very low ADOT guys. The New Orleans Saints do not compensate by being all that explosive in the run game. They're efficient in the run game relative to other teams, but not explosive.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's move. This game's going to be awesome, and the Niners do really need a win. Here's the interesting kind of thing about it is, everyone is just sort of assuming that the Niners, are going to lose to the Saints and the Seahawks are going to beat the Rams. And the Seahawks-Rams game, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I think is an interesting one. So I'm excited to talk about that in conjunction with what the Niners are going to potentially do in New Orleans. Which game should we go to next? How about another crappy game?
Let's do Pittsburgh, Arizona.
Yeah. in the desert. This is a 425 game. So the 425 games are a bunch of garbage, and then Kansas City, New England. So if you don't want to watch Kansas City, New England, let's talk about a reason to watch Arizona, Pittsburgh, and Duck Hodges.
Yeah.
The Steelers are favored by 2.5. What is this line if the Cardinals are show up to play in the game last week against the Rams?
Yeah, I mean and conversely, also if the Steelers don't beat the Browns outright, right? I mean, as underdogs. So I would probably say people would have it more of a pick, even if not the Cardinals, maybe -1 or 2. So yeah, it did move a lot off of last week. So that is something to consider if you like the Steelers, either against the spread or -140 on the money line.
Yeah, it is. I've struggled with this one because this goes against my intuition. I think the Cardinals are a decently plucky team, and they are getting points at home against a guy named Duck Hodges.
Yeah, the thing is, though, I mean, for one, is Duck doesn't kill them.
Thanks, Mike.
So there's that, and then the other thing is when you look at this matchup, okay, what do the Cardinals do the best? Well, they play offense the best among the other things that they do. The Steelers, I think. This is a situation, I think, where defense does matter, right? In the sense that the Cardinals are not very good offensively. The Steelers are able to capitalize on turnovers from a young quarterback or turnover opportunities from a young quarterback. They get after the passer, and the Cardinals have mitigated pass rush better this year, of course, than last season. But again, that's going to be tough to do against the Steelers. This Steelers defense. And then what don't the Cardinals do? They don't stop anybody. And so, Juju Smith-Schuster, he's questionable this week. Deontay Johnson with an illness questionable. I think both will play. Connor as well was limited the other day, so they might be getting more healthy on offense. And so if they put up 20 in this game, much like they did against the Cleveland defense, which is better than the Arizona defense, I do think that they get at least, the W in this game.
I can be on board with that, especially because it goes against my intuition, and that usually makes me feel better because I know I'm going to be wrong about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so. Total on this game. Total on this game is 43. Not a huge lean on either side. I mean, that just shows you again the low scoring nature of this. It also says the other thing, which is true. If people agree with us and this number gets out to 3.5. It might be a play for Arizona. I do think it's that tight in terms of it's not like a New Orleans versus San Francisco thing where we would probably like the game even out to 3.5. If this game got out to 3.5, I do think all bets are off on the Steelers.
With you there. We already talked about this game for far too long.
Okay.
Let's go to the afternoon game that is worth talking about. Your Chiefs go to Foxborough to play the Patriots. It's going to be cold. This is not too dissimilar from the kind of setup in last year's game in New England, except that both of these teams are, I think, probably significantly worse in the minds of many on offense. And so for that reason, the total is, I think it's 5 points lower than it was when they met on Sunday Night Football last year. I want to say it was 54. But it's 49. I've even seen 48.5 in a couple of spots. To me, the Patriots being favored by 3 makes perfect sense. I don't think I know a ton about the ceiling for each team, yet I expect them to potentially be able to meet it. And so for me, it's all about points being scored.
Yeah, this is a quintessential defense doesn't matter game, right? I mean, yes. if the Patriots come out and play well offensively, then the fact that the Chiefs have been pretty impressive this year on defense is going to be mostly irrelevant. I think, and Kansas City has played the toughest schedule of opposing PFF Massey offenses this year. I mean, it's something that's, not something I had expected. And so their defense has been impressive. The problem is they have the weaknesses that somebody like Brady and Belichick are going to be able to exploit. I mean, I have, visions of, the Chiefs defense mostly playing well against the Packers on Sunday Night Football, but then Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams out of the backfield making guys like Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson, look pretty foolish out there. And Brady has that in James White, right? James White actually had a pretty good game against Houston. He's probably the only player on that offense that did. On the other side, the Chiefs' offense is as healthy as they've been all season. You have, the only issue is Darrell Williams was out, but, that he's a running back. He's also a third-string running back. So, when you go with Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, I mean, the only thing I think that's going to keep the Chiefs from doing their end of the bargain is, Mahomes, who's been a little bit less accurate than he was last season.
Yeah, he has, and that is worrisome. However, they're still going to take shots, and that's the comforting part of it, right? Is that Andy Reid is not going to be bullied off of taking shots down the field. I mean, Mahomes is still, despite missing a few games, top 5, top 6 in terms of completions down the field, yards on passes, 20-plus yards down the field. And the uptick in his negatively graded play rate actually makes me feel just as good about this because, there's always a chance that if there's a team that's going to take advantage of one of those mistakes, it's probably the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And an early little defensive touchdown never hurt anybody.
Well, let's go through what could go wrong in this game. I mean, what went wrong with respect to an over last year in the AFC title game? Well, the New England got out in front. They were up 7, I believe it was 7-0 until Dorsett scored a touchdown at the very end. So it was 14-0. If this game's 14-0 at halftime, you and I are going to be pretty upset, right? But what happens? Well, Mahomes is not going to give up, right? And as a result, that game actually sailed over in the AFC Championship game, a number bigger than this, in weather worse than this, as a result, right? So what makes this game go under? And the same thing was true as well. Kansas City got behind in the first matchup. The game wasn't necessarily on pace for an over, but then you got kick returns, right? Dave Tobe is a great special teams coordinator. You got, Mahomes threw interceptions in the end zone in the first matchup, and this game still sailed over. So, give me a scenario where this game goes under other than.
I have one for you.
Okay.
The scenario where this game goes under is exactly what happened in Mexico City, and that is that Tyreek Hill gets hurt. Because what we saw, the New England Patriots defense, and why it doesn't matter, is that if you have good offense, like the Deshaun Watsons, the Houston Texans have, you can make some hay against them. And that is what Tyreek Hill brings to the table. He's going to open things up. Obviously, we know how much of a struggle the Patriots had with him the last time they played in Foxborough. So to me, that's what it's all about. If he can stay on the field and stay healthy, and Andy Reid can actually run all the things he wants to run, then I think that this is a really savvy move, and you take the over, especially because Brady is playing better fundamentally than the market is giving him credit for. Right? He's a top 10 graded quarterback. He suffered a ton of drops. That Texans game was ugly, but the Chiefs are going to give him a little bit of a different scheme, right? So, I think it goes wrong if Tyreek Hill gets hurt, and otherwise I'm pretty pumped about it.
Here's a question that I have, because I think when we look at possibilities for our block of the week, pick of the week, or whatever, do we want to look at secondary markets in this game? Because 49 is a key number in the NFL, right? This 28-21 would basically yield a push here. But if you look at some secondary markets, for example, the first quarter over in this game is 9.5. The first half over is 23.5, right? And I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing here. If you're looking at places where there's a key number of 20 or 49 here, you really like to get yourself a 48.5, but you don't want to buy down to that number. 23.5 is right underneath 24, right? So first half goes 14-10, cash, right? First quarter, basically you would just need both teams to score, field goal and a touchdown to get yourself over 9.5. Kansas City's been one of the best teams in the league in terms of scripted plays. They're aggressive early in games. New England's one of the best teams at creating turnovers. So again, even though New England's offense has sputtered a little bit, you're talking about the possibility of a short field. The drawback for me for any of these first half, first quarter things is the fact that the kicking game for New England is an absolute nightmare. So that would be, that would be somewhere to look. I don't know if it's in consideration because I do think the full game is probably the play, even though you're giving up more points than twice the first half line, for example.
Yeah. Cool. Look. Here's my thing. The secondary markets bug me because we're moving further away from the team's goal, which is to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that pisses me off beyond belief because you'll have teams acting in ways that are so irrational relative to the position you're in. And so from a stress level perspective,
from a quality of life perspective,
yeah. It's just it just hurts my soul.
Yeah, I can see that, and it can sort of go both ways, right? For example, on Sunday, the first quarter over in San Francisco, Baltimore hit, but the full game total didn't because the game slowed down. You get into a slugfest, right, and you get weather and all that kind of stuff, and the game slows down. But there are equally as many games that don't get off to a fast start. That much like as we talked about the AFC title game and even the game between these two teams last season. So yeah, that was just something I wanted to throw out there just in case it whetted your appetite.
I would rather consider the total game. But with that being said, if you had to take one of these games that we have just talked about, which one are you going with?
Oh, that's let's go with I would go with New Orleans over.
New Orleans, San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean the thing for me is just that I think San Francisco and New Orleans offenses are good. I think people are overrating the effect that a good New Orleans defense and a very good San Francisco defense is going to have on the total of this game, including what happened last week. San Francisco mostly shutting down a really good offense in Baltimore. I think a lot of that had to do with the rain. I think a lot of that had to do with the way that the game flowed. 44.5 or 44. Let's go with 40. 44 is a really low number in today's NFL, especially between teams whose offenses aren't the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears.
Yep. The two games that I am most excited about are the Saints and the Niners, and the Chiefs and the Patriots, and the overs in both those games. And I think the two, if you look at the teams, the strengths of each side, and the offenses for all of those teams, the fact that the Niners, who have a very good offense, and the Saints have a very good offense, and the total in that game in a dome is 5 points lower than, the Chiefs, who have not been as good, and the Patriots, who, the fundamentals are good, but they certainly have not been as good of an offense, is 5 points higher outside, is, I think tells you everything you need to know about where I'm at with them. So I'm happy to go Niners Saints over.
All right, that's great. Okay,
let's do it. I've been told that you are. I can't see you right now, but I've been told that you're wearing what one might term as not so proper clothing.
That's right. And speaking of proper clothing, finding a dress shirt that fits is hard. Collars are too tight, sleeves are too long. Something is always not right. And for me, it's like being big and tall, but not like Steve Palazzolo big and tall. It's sort of like in no man's land, right? And Yeah, and so, but luckily, ordering a custom fit shirt has never been easier thanks to Proper Cloth. At propercloth.com, you can easily create custom shirt size in seconds just by answering 10 easy questions, and they are easy. I know that, both of us did really well in school, but they would have done the easy questions even if you weren't, of the academic ilk. Not only does Proper Cloth make it easy to create your custom size, they make it really simple to completely customize your shirt and get the style you want. And believe me, if you're as particular as PFF_George, and they pass his test, they'll pass everybody's test. Want a bigger pocket size or a bigger left cuff for your watch? Customize over 30 different style points and get the exact style you want. Or select from hundreds of pre-designed shirts. The team at Proper Cloth works with the best fabric producers around the world and only buy fabric that meets their high quality expectations. Each one of their shirts goes through extensive quality control testing, so you're getting the absolute best quality and craftsmanship. All of their styles come with a perfect fit guarantee, so if it doesn't fit, you can get remade completely for free. Very convenient, and they have great customer service teams based in New York City that makes it super easy to get a shirt remade. I personally went through Glenn. Glenn did a great job of dealing with my emails, which aren't always the nicest in the world. So Proper Cloth has been featured in many of the top publications, such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Esquire, GQ, Fast Company. GQ even calls them their new favorite online custom shirt maker. Proper Cloth shirts are completely custom made for you and start at just $80. So you're guaranteed to find a style that you love with quality that doesn't break the bank. Stop wearing shirts that don't fit. Start looking your best with a custom fitted shirt. Go to propercloth.com/PFF today. Enter the gift code PFF20 to save $20 off your first shirt. See why Proper Cloth is the best custom shirt maker. Go to propercloth.com/PFF.
That was really well done.
Thank you. I mean, I know I'm not wearing my Proper Cloth shirt right now. I will, of course, for our other videos. But yeah, it was a very painless experience for somebody who, as you know, is one of my best friends, George, somebody who doesn't take their clothes very seriously.
Yeah, you should get more credit for that. I think you do take them seriously when you need to, and that's what matters.
Yep, that's true. It's like the running game. It's like only short yardage.
That's a great comparison.
Okay, let's talk about some of these other games.
Let's do a little speed round here.
We talked about, so Carolina at Atlanta. Atlanta laying 3 at home. Tell me how the Falcons lose this game despite playing against a team with an interim coach.
Because of the interim coach gets people fired up, and the Carolina Panthers they have some players on that team, and the Falcons are the Falcons. That's how.
What was your favorite "the Falcons are back" moment, by the way?
Wait, hold on. You broke up for a second. Say that again.
What was your favorite "the Atlanta Falcons are back, we should take them seriously" moment?
Oh, I mean, after they beat the Saints, right? It was like, okay, that was a total joke, and I was not willing to get back on the train. But when they then managed to win 2 in a row, I'm not gonna lie, there was like, Dan Quinn has figured this out. This is the turning point for this organization. There was like a 1/10 of a second where I felt that way.
Interesting. When they won and gave us value on Green Line, that was my favorite moment, but we knew it was fleeting. Let's talk about a game that actually has some AFC playoff implications. The Baltimore Ravens go on the road. They're anywhere from 5.5 to 6-point favorites against the Buffalo Bills. We've been inundated with the last, month or two about how great Josh Allen has been and how much crow we're going to have to eat. How do you see this game working out?
I remember we spoke about this game, on early Monday morning, and felt like, that there might be some value on the Bills here, playing at home, being a huge underdog, getting extra rest, all this stuff. And our model, kind of spit in our face here. So, for that reason, I'm like very hesitant. but I understand it because the Josh Allen love has been really, widespread after that Thanksgiving game. And he's still a guy that's making, turnover-worthy plays at more than twice the rate of the big-time throws that he's making. So Lamar Jackson is decisively the better quarterback, obviously, in this game, and the Ravens are the better team and the better offense overall. But 6, 5.5, 6, depending on where you see it, is a lot for a team that's like, as decent as the Buffalo Bills. Right?
Here's the thing that I think will give me pause if I'm going to bet Buffalo. The Buffalo defense is against the run is one of the worst in the NFL this year, and they've faced one of the easiest group of run offenses. So obviously that doesn't matter most of the time, but with the Ravens, it probably is going to matter. The bet that I like the most in this game, though, and it's actually trended upward a little bit, is I kind of like over 43.5, and in fact it's gone up to 44 because I think of the ancillary things like the wind is projected to be about 18 miles per hour, a little bit of precipitation possibly, but I don't think that that's going to matter with these two teams because of the way that they generate points is not necessarily of the passing the ball affected by wind ilk. So that would be my only lean. This will be a game I think at the offices we have at least on one of the secondary TVs because it's not great from a betting perspective, but it's compelling from the playoff perspective.
Yes, I'm with you there.
Okay, let's talk about a game where we nailed it on Monday morning. The Washington Redskins, the Breadsticks, they go on the road to Green Bay. They were getting 14, I believe, on Monday morning. Both of us said this is not going to last. Take Washington, fade Green Bay, and now this number is 12.5. I think most of the value is sucked out of that selection now. Through those two numbers. Is there anything really compelling in this game other than you could have bet on it earlier in the week?
Nope, and I did, so I'm happy about that. I think it's funny. Was this a number thing, or was it like does anyone actually know that Dwayne Haskins played well in that game, or they just knew Washington won? I can't really decide. I still think if I had to choose one side of this game, though, I would take the Redskins at 12.5.
Well, you look at their ELO rating. Washington's ELO would correspond to a team that's 5.5 points worse than the average team. The Green Bay Packers, despite their record, are only 3 points better than the average team. You take that, you add in a little home field advantage. There is still a little bit of value, I'd say, on the 12.5, but it's not enough, I would say, to recommend. But if you are a Washington fan, the interesting thing, and this was something I'll just talk about for a brief second, that is interesting to consider. There was a significant amount of Washington fans in Carolina for that victory the other day, and it's because before the Panthers were a team in the NFL, all the people from the Carolinas were Redskins fans. And so that's something interesting that we don't account for in our model, but it might be something that if you have to look at through the history of the league, might be something to understand as we think about the landscape of home field advantage now in the NFL, with travel not being a big deal, it mostly being the fans in the stands, something to consider. Okay, Denver against Houston. Denver's season sweep of the Los Angeles Chargers is a bit tainted, let's say, by the great job Vance-ness of Anthony Lynn, right?
Right.
However, they are getting a full 9 points here, and this has kind of come out a little bit, out to 9.5, and then back to 9. And there's some reason to like Denver here, yeah?
Yeah, the Drew Lock thing is not. I don't think it's necessarily like that Drew Lock played decently, because I don't think he really played all that well, even though they won. But I think it's more about kind of fading the Texans winning their Super Bowl last week. And, that was an impressive win, no doubt. But I would expect Denver plays super hard, right? Like Vic Fangio gets that team to try.
Yep.
And in a game where both teams are trying very hard and one team has already, won their biggest game of the season, it just seems like 9 is too many, especially if you find it 9.5.
Yeah, there was also the relief factor too. Like if you're Houston, the the tough one was, let's say, so Tennessee is on your heels now, right? At 7-5, and you're 8-4, but you beat New England, and now the path to winning that division is pretty simple. It's beat the Tennessee Titans twice in the last 4 weeks, and that would be less the case if they would have lost to New England. But there's some, like, I think, relief factor here playing at home, and they're always a team that has been a letdown fest, right? They go to New Orleans week 1, they play an inspired game, they lose a little bit, then they're laying 9 to Gardner Minshew and almost lose that game outright, and I think that's the kind of team that the Texans really are. And to your point, I think Denver does play hard here. The issue I have is that Isaac Yiadom, he was abused again last week, and Houston does have 3 wide receivers that scare me, and that would be my only concern here.
Yeah. All right, what's up next?
Let's look at. Oh wow. Okay, Detroit going on the road to face the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings laying 12.5. Total on this game 43. This is a far cry from the game that we got, 7-8 weeks ago when Minnesota went to Detroit and the game was basically a pick'em. That was a pretty fun game to watch. This game, maybe not so much. That game ended 42-30. The total on this game is 43. What say you?
Still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. It might be this LA weather that's causing the connection to break up.
Oh, well. So I said that the last game between these two ended 42-30. This total on this game is 43.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That was the side of this that stuck out to me, right? I mean, the Vikings at home against like bad quarterbacks has always been something that people seem to love the Vikings. The Vikings defense, though, and you've been on this for a while, like they're not very good. So, which is not something that we've said for quite some time. However, it would worry me that there would be, they would be up 7 and there would be this wonderful pick 7 at the end of the game, or pick 6 or whatever it is, that kind of like completely dashes your hopes. But I mean, the right side, in my opinion, is the Lions if you have to choose one, and that's where our model would shade. But
yeah.
I'm not like super excited about this game at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a universe where this plays out like the Denver-Minnesota game, where backup quarterback, good wide receivers, abuses. Like, honestly, Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay have eaten against Minnesota every game for the past, bunch of matchups. But the book is out on Blau. Time's up over Blau. But the Detroit defense is awful. So I would say the over is probably the best play in this game. The spread, it just worries me too much. Okay, let's set a record for the amount of time we talk about this game. Dolphins at Jets, 5.5. Jets are favored by. Total in this game 45.5.
You had to take one side of that. What are you going with?
Under.
Oh, interesting. I'd take the Dolphins.
Yeah.
The point.
Yep.
All right. Next. By the way, if we don't take enough time on any game, you go to PFF.com, get an elite subscription, you go to Greenline, you get all the bowl games, you get all these games, and you can talk about them with yourself to your heart's content.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, and that's the point of, and that was one of the reasons why we've decided, just to give out all the numbers, is that if you are a Jets fan and you want to bet on the Jets, you'll know exactly what we think about that bet.
Exactly. I have a proposition here. I think there are some games that are not as interesting, and some games that are. So a couple games that are not as interesting would be the Colts versus the Bucs, the Chargers versus the Jags, and let's do these in record time as well.
Okay, we have the over 6.5 Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is 2 games away from that. I am unusually nervous for that to happen, despite that their schedule. So I don't know. Hopefully the Bucs come out to play like they did last week against the Jaguars, against the Colts here. I think the Colts will be probably reeling a little bit from the fact that their playoff hopes are almost dead.
Yeah, not in good shape. But I said this on Monday morning, I do kind of like the Colts as underdog because I hate Jameis as a favorite. Chargers, Jags, man, talk about disappointment and irrelevancy and middle of nowhereness. The Chargers are 3-point favorites in Jacksonville. Minshew is back. Total is 43.
What was your favorite? What was your favorite Nick Foles as the Jags starter moment?
Yeah, the one where he earned all the respect by getting the contract.
I would lay the points with the Jaguars, I'd lay the points with the Chargers because the Chargers are they're very Titans-like in that they'll surprise you once in a while.
Oh man, yeah, I guess I want to hop back on the Minshew bandwagon, but I mean, I don't know if I can.
Yeah,
I would just do everything I could not to pick this game, and if I had 3, I'd probably take the Chargers. Fuck it.
All right, let's.
The next game up is that Titans Raiders. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and this game, let's just talk about it for a brief second. Titans are at 7-5. Raiders are at 6-6. If you would have told us at the beginning of the season that this game was going to be for possible playoff positioning in the AFC, we would have laughed at you. So there is something here. The Titans are laying 2.5 on the road. Here's a question, because we have no lead on this game really, but I'll ask you a quick question. If this game was played 2 weeks ago, what's the spread?
That was basically the question that I was going to ask you, and it's Raiders by 3.5.
Yeah, I would say it's just flipped 2.5. I would say, but yeah, I mean Tennessee was left for dead at 3-5 or 3-4, whatever they were when they lost to the Denver Broncos with after they benched Mariota. Now they're at 7-5. They are they're actually, I mean, I think they control their own destiny in the AFC South. If they beat the Houston twice and win out, they would win the division by, without even the tiebreaker. So this is a hugely important game. And then for the Raiders, the question becomes now that you're a game back, I believe has Oakland played the anyway? The Oakland's, I believe, has played the Steelers. They have an opportunity here to still salvage a playoff spot in the 6th seed in the AFC. So this is an important game and one that, even though it probably is not a great or well-played game, we'll probably have on in the background.
Yeah, I'm actually sort of excited about this game. And if I had to go, if I had to take one side of this game, initially I would have said, the Raiders are absolutely that side. And our model feels differently because of how well Ryan Tannehill has played. And the Raiders have, despite Mike Mayock's attempts, not the greatest defense in the world.
Yeah.
So you expect Ryan Tannehill, I mean, he's a 125 passer rating from a clean pocket, and there's no reason to believe that he won't have a clean pocket for the entirety of this game. So this is one that goes against my intuition again, and I'm kind of excited to watch it because I've talked about John Gruden being the coach of the year should the Raiders, kind of keep it rolling, and they promptly just needed like 2 diapers to hold in the amount of excrement that came out of them since that point. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the Titans legit have a playoff chance now, which is crazy to think about. But
yeah, they're tied with the Steelers at 7-5. I believe the Steelers have the tiebreaker currently, but it's irrelevant until the season ends. Okay, this actually, and I'm so excited for this because we watch the Sunday Night Football game together.
Yes.
We're working, and then usually it's us wanting one of the sides and being disappointed. So, but this Sunday Night Football game between the Seahawks and the Rams, we have no horse in the race. Seahawks are laying a point on the road-ish against the LA Rams. Total on this game, 47. Seattle now the favorite to win the NFC West. We have them about 59%. The betting markets are 55%, so some value there still. What excites you the most about this game?
Well, what excites me the most, there's a couple things. The first is this is an opportunity for Russell Wilson to steal back some MVP shine. And he'll have to do it against a a defense that is legit, right? They're not a total cupcake. But what really excites me about this is that I think the Niners have a decent chance, right, to beat the Saints. And the Rams, despite how bad they've looked against real teams, have a decent chance to beat a Seahawks team that is masquerading as a 10-2 team.
Yes.
But they're an average team with a great quarterback. And that's the recipe for the Rams to win the game, because the Seahawks can't get any pressure. They don't have anyone that scares you, a ton, right? They're going to play a bunch of base defense and cover three. And that's quite literally what Sean McVay's offense is like geared to beat. So I think this is going to be a super compelling game. I would expect there to be a decent number of Seahawks fans there. But the Seahawks just managed to play in these very exciting games, right? I continue to mention this. They're 10-2. The other 10-2 teams are all leading the league in terms of fewest number of plays being run when losing, right? They play from ahead. The Seahawks are on the total opposite end of the spectrum. They've got 200 more plays run when losing. Russell Wilson is continuously fighting back from behind, and he's been tremendous. So it's an opportunity both to see a good game and for Russell Wilson to kind of put a stamp on the MVP case.
Yeah, and we talked about this when they played on Thursday night. We had a small lean on the under, and we said this could go wrong for exactly the reason you said, which was the Seahawks don't play nickel, and they've luck boxed into a bunch of teams like Philly and Minnesota that don't have wide receivers, right? And the Rams are actually trending in the other direction. Robert Woods is healthy. Cooper Kupp is healthy. Brandon Cooks is healthy. Tyler Higbee had a career day against Arizona. I think Gerald Everett will, at least give it a go this week. And so the Rams match up really well here. But the Seahawks, to your point, have found a way. They have always found a way. And, the Rams defense, I think, Jalen Ramsey's been a little bit disappointing since coming over. And then, they don't have that second corner that really scares you. The Rams obviously have Aaron Donald, but the Seahawks, like the most underrated thing the Seahawks did on Monday Night Football was they controlled the middle of the line of scrimmage against the Vikings. And granted, none of those guys are anywhere near the football player that Aaron Donald is. But the idea that the Seahawks offensive line is this travesty, I think, is overblown now. So I think both of these teams score points. And so if you are looking at some of the secondary I absolutely love first quarter over in this game. I absolutely love first half over in this game. I love the full game over in this game. And I think it's just going to be an exciting one. So I can't wait to watch it. I'm not having a horse in this race is going to be a lot of fun just because it's really a game where a lot can change, right? If the Rams win and they go to 8-5, they're right on the heels of Minnesota, and Minnesota doesn't have the easiest schedule coming up.
It is. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Especially on the heels of what happens in San Francisco, New Orleans. All right, so you got to take one side. Seahawks are favored by 1. It looks like right now. You got to take one side. Basically, a pick. Who you picking?
I'd take the Seahawks still. Honestly, it's just the better quarterback. But again, like I said, I think obviously it could go either way. But I'll take the Seattle Seahawks.
I will take the Rams. I don't know why. It just feels like everyone loves the Seahawks. There are some fundamentals that are not good with them, and my Rams here in LA are good at beating mediocre teams. So there you go.
Okay, speaking of a primetime game that is not primetime, the New York Giants, I think with Eli Manning at the helm this week, going to Philadelphia to face an Eagles team reeling after losing to the to Miami Dolphins. This is another one where we were wrong compared to our model. We kind of liked the Giants getting all those points early in the week. Our model is a little bit more shaded towards Philadelphia. I mean, is there anything more to say about this game?
No, other than in the pick'em league that I'm in that sends out lines earlier in the week, the Eagles were 8.5-point favorites. And so is it really worth moving the line for Eli versus Daniel Jones? Does that really make a difference?
I don't think so. I mostly think it's I don't know. I honestly think it has an effect on the total. I think it makes the total more likely to go under because as bad as Eli is, he does not throw as many. He doesn't turn the ball over as much as Daniel Jones, and hence I don't think the Eagles are going to get the short fields that they need essentially to score points anymore.
That's a great point.
like they're not the Eagles offense they need to face
So
quarterbacks like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
They need Nick Foles. Nick Foles now available.
Nick Foles and a 1 for Carson Wentz should be the trade of the offseason.
Who says no?
Who says no?
All right, that is the week. Now I have only been to Cincy Y a couple of times this week. So I know that you have more exposure at this point to the Cincy Y.
Both literally and figuratively, to be quite honest with you.
Do you have any stories?
Not really. I mean, somebody told me to. I almost got in another fight in the locker room, but that's
Really?
like a normal occurrence. Well, yeah, like
Wow.
one of the workers there was just like I don't have a locker there because why would I? So I was just changing in the middle of the locker room. He's like, can't get a locker, and I go, basically the same thing as before. He's like, you'll survive. And
I mean, it's the fact that you, the gentle giant, have gotten in almost 2 fights in the Cincy Y locker room, and I have not even come close is spectacular. I don't have, unfortunately, because I'm on West Coast time. I have not yet gone to the gym in the hotel here yet, but I'm going to. So we'll have to just wait and see if I have any stories for the Sunday night pod. Which, if you're still listening, you should definitely check out because it's a lot of fun, and we're tired and weary, so you can make fun of us.
Yep.
While listening to it. You gonna go play some basketball now?
I think so. I think Steve and his Jerry curl will try to do some turnaround jumpers on me, and I will try to block some shots.
Go get them. I'll talk to you later. Peace out, guys. Awesome. Thanks, man.